What's up everyone, this is Ryan here, and in this video we are going to be talking about best practices for styles. Now before I get to that, I just wanted to take a moment to do a quick shout out to Futurice, or Futurice, not exactly sure how to pronounce that, but it's a company in Finland I believe, and they took some time to put together a GitHub full of best practices for Android development as well as a couple other things. And some of the ideas in this video are coming from that GitHub. So I put a link in the description box below. You should definitely check that out. I really appreciate them taking the time to do that. Anyways, what we're going to do is I'll just sort of start with the three main goals that we want to think about for using styles effectively. So for starters, first and foremost, eliminating redundant code. So basically what this means is instead of applying attributes like, for example, padding or backgrounds and all that kind of stuff to each individual view in our layouts. So for example, we have 16 buttons that we're going to be styling. Instead of doing that, we're going to create a style for our buttons and then apply that style to them. And then that way we're not going to have a huge, cluttered, ugly, and longer than it needs to be XML or layout XML file. Now, another thing that's kind of an interesting side effect of that is it's going to allow us to make global changes to all of the views sort of right at the same time instead of having to change all of them individually. And lastly, it's also going to allow us to use the design preview as something that we can use to sort of help our design process. So lots of good stuff in this video. What we're going to do is, for starters, figure out sort of something that's, again, something that I actually picked up from the Futurice GitHub. So one thing that was sort of neglected to be mentioned in any of the Android docs that I read from the Android team, not to shit on them too much, but this would have been kind of useful, is that you don't actually need to name your styles files styles.xml if you don't want to. So what that means is we can actually have multiple styles files, and we're going to do that right now. So what I want you to do is head over to main res, right-click on the values folder, and just go new values resource folder. And we're going to call this file styles_views. Now you can really name it whatever you want. In this case, what we're going to do is I want to keep my regular styles.xml file for theming, application themes and things like that. And then this other file, styles_views, is going to be for styling specific views. Now obviously this is a pretty small application and we don't really need to do this. But as you'll see, we're going to be creating quite a number of styles even for such a small application. So when you're working with a large-scale operation, then what you're going to want to do is create several styles files as you see fit, and that way it's easier to find things and things just make more sense. So the important thing to note is that what does need to occur is you do need to contain these styles within a resources tag, and then the styles themselves need to be within a style tag. That is sort of the one important thing. The actual name of the file isn't particularly important. So first things first, let me just find my spot here. So what we'll do is let's hop over briefly to Fragment input. Now we want to create styles, so that includes backgrounds, font sizes, font family, all those kinds of awesome things for all of these buttons here. What we're going to do is for all of the buttons in what I've sort of called the number pad, which is all of the numbers as well as the decimal and the evaluate sign, we're going to make that a particular color. And then the operations buttons, so that's divide, multiply, subtract, and add, those are all also going to be their own sort of different color. And that's sort of just for visual appeal. And so that means we're going to need to create a style for each of those. But we're creating two styles instead of styling all of these buttons sort of individually. So what we're going to do is hop back over to the values and styles views, and we'll just create our first style here. So first things first, we're just going to create a style tag, and we're going to call this first one button number, I can't type, button number pad. And the parent for that style is going to be widget.appcompat.button. So if you're quite new to working with styles, some of this might not make a whole lot of sense to you. Like, why am I saying parent equals this thing here? I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about this stuff because there's documents online and lots of other stuff that can explain it to you. And also, I'm actually going to do a huge sort of, not huge, but a series on styles themselves, because there's just too much to talk about in this short little video. But longer story shorter, what I am telling the compiler, for lack of a better word, with this statement is, hey, I want to use the sort of typical style elements that are applied to a standard factory app-compat theme button, but I want to make small tweaks to it. So that's all that we're saying here. I want to inherit from widget.appcompat.button styles. So that'll include a number of sort of little changes, and what we'll do is just sort those out right now. So first things first, we're going to add a couple items here. First item will say Android text color. And we haven't actually defined white as our as something in our colors.xml file, but we can just cheat a little bit and say @Android : color/white. And that's going to allow us to use one of the sort of built-in Android resources and kind of cheat a little bit. A little handy there. We're going to say item background, and let's say yeah, Android background. And we are going to say @drawable. Sorry, we're going to do that later. What we're going to say for now is @color, and then we are going to use the color primary for our number pad buttons. Now, we're actually going to change this at the end of the video for a special drawable, but we'll do that at the very end because it's just it's sort of outside of the scope of this tutorial, and it's like one of the only things in this entire series which I am going to just copy and paste in, and we'll provide the GitHub link for you to do that, because it's just not really worth talking about. But yeah, we're going to come back and fix that later. And then we're also going to change the font size. So we'll say item name equals, and just type, font size rather. What's going on? Text size. Sorry, I am confusing myself here. Android text size, and then we want the text on the buttons to be quite large, so we're going to say 34 SP. And that basically covers it for the button number pad. What we'll do is we'll just create a bunch of these first, and then we'll kind of see how they affect our layouts. The next thing we need is going to be for the operation buttons in Fragment display. So again, that's subtract, add, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead and just copy and paste this, because there's only like one thing that we're actually going to change. We're going to call this, well, maybe two things. We're going to call this button operation. We can keep the parent the same. Let's see here, the text color is going to be the same, that's fine, and the text size is going to be the same. The only difference is that we're actually going to use a different color and eventually a different drawable, but we're going to say color primary dark for that one there. Yeah, so what we'll do is we've basically got our styles figured out for Fragment input, but there's one last thing that we need to take care of. Now, if we were to just apply these styles here, then we would get sort of the standard Android font, or I can't remember what it is, but just like the typical font. And what I would like to do is include sort of material fonts on APIs that can handle it. So if I were to come down here and type item and then type font family, then we're going to get a little bit of an error. It's going to tell us font family requires API level 16 and the current minimum is 14. Now, I should say font family is the way that you sort of choose specific Roboto fonts. So this presents a bit of an issue. How can we solve this? So what we can do is we can go to just right-click on the res folder here, go to new Android resource file, and we're going to call this again styles views. And what we'll do is you can see we have a list of available qualifiers down here. We can just go down to version, go to next, type 16 since that's when font family starts up, hit OK, and then that'll create our alternate resource which has the same name. Now what this allows us to do is when the app gets sort of launched on a particular device, it's going to check the version number of, the API level of the device. So for example, API v16 or higher, and it's going to say, okay, well, since this device is 16 or higher, use this one, or if it's 16 or lower, use the other one. And so yeah, what we'll do is create our alternate resource here. Now, let's head over to Styles Views and just delete that one there, and we'll copy and paste this over. Control C, Control V. There we go. And let me just double check that I've got everything I need. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll type item, and we're going to say font family again. And for font family, I'm going to say sans serif, and that should give us sort of a standard Roboto font there, in theory. But it'll make our text look a little bit better, I'll put it that way. Alright, so we've got that all figured out. Now the next thing we'll do is apply those styles to our layouts here and make them look prettier. So first things first, let's look at the top one here, button. So I've gone to the top sort of group of buttons, and we're going to just add something in here. We're going to say style, and no Android namespace, just style. We're going to say @style, and then we're going to call this, this one's going to be a number pad button. So we'll just do that. So basically how this is going to work is the first 3 buttons in a given layout are going to be styled with the button number pad style, and then the last button is going to be an operation button, and that's going to have the button, let's see here, style equals @style/button operation. So let's just really quickly copy and paste those in, and we'll see what the effect is in the design preview. And oops, I hate it when it creates that extra space there. It bugs the shit out of me. So yeah, let's just do that. So first 3 are button number pad, and then the last one is going to be button operation. I'll just start with the number pad buttons here. We'll just add that in for each of these. This is the fun part, the menial labor of Android programming. Alright, I think that's the last one. Cool. And then let's come up and grab the operation style here. And then we'll just kind of do the same thing. So again, that's the last button. So yeah, we do have to add a line to every button, but instead of like adding all of these different attributes to each button, we're just adding this little style thing. And if we hop over to the design preview, that should have made our things look quite a bit better. That font size is actually a little bit large, but I think that's because I have a Nexus 4 on here, so that's something we can kind of revisit later. But just to give you an idea, that's what that's going to look like, sort of as a relative preview. Now, one thing I need to mention is that if we were to use this style alone, our background is going to be completely unresponsive when the user presses on it. So what we're going to do to solve that problem is to create some alternate drawables, but like I say, we're going to do that at the end of the video. The next thing we're going to do is style up our fragment display. Okay, so moving over to fragment display, we can see that we have a couple things that we need to style. There's the image button, there's the horizontal scroll view, and then we have the text view, and those are each going to get some slight modifications. So what we'll do is head back over to Styles Views, and we'll make those changes now. Let me just find my place in my notes here. Okay, so the first thing we'll work on is the text view in display, and we're going to call that text view display. I am a fan of keep it simple, stupid. And we're actually not going to inherit from a particular style because there's just not really any need to do that. And what we'll do is we'll say item, and we're going to say Android text size, and I want that to be quite large again, so that's going to be 56 SP. I'm just going to copy and paste that and save it a little bit of time. And we're going to specify the gravity, and Android gravity is going to be, let's see here. So I want the gravity of this text view. Let's see if I get any kind of a preview. Let's see here. So I want the gravity, which is going to sort of dictate where this text shows up, to be in the center of this text view and sort of stuck to the right of the text view. So let's head over to Styles Views, and we're just going to say center vertical. And if you want to kind of apply 2 styles at once, why is that showing up as broken? Text view display. Okay, well, oh, that's because it's repeated there. Duh. So if you want to apply a sort of two different values for a particular attribute, you can just use, I don't actually know what the name of this separator is, but it's like a vertical line. For me, I can achieve that by holding shift and hitting, I believe that's backslash, but you know, whatever, just Google that shit. And so that gives us that little bar there. And then the next thing we'll add there is right. And cool. For Android, for this one here, we're going to say max lines, because max lines, and we're going to set that to 1, because I don't want the sort of I don't want the answer to the text view or anything like that to sort of wrap to a new line. I want everything to be on one line and then inside of a scrollable container. So that's what we'll do there. I don't think we need to. Oh, we do need to mess around with that in styles v16. So let's go ahead and copy this. Hop over to your v16 styles views. And basically the same process. We're just going to add the font family attribute in there. And for this, let's see here. We're going to use sans serif condensed instead of just sans serif there. And let's hop back over to values, styles, views, the regular one. And the last thing we'll do is just style our scroll view a little bit. It's going to need some padding just so it doesn't look terrible. So let's say style, and we're going to call this style scroll view display. Again, no need for a parent for that one. I don't really know if it has any useful parents, the scroll view widget, particularly the horizontal scroll view widget. And we're going to add padding. So we're just going to say Android, and then padding left. Oops, Android padding left, and we're going to give that a 16 dip padding, which is a very standard value that you'll see in material design. And then we're going to call that one padding right. Now, we could also handle padding end and padding start, but that would require us to create a new values file for v17 or higher, and I just quite frankly couldn't be bothered to do that. But if I was actually releasing like an actual application here, then that is something that I would handle. But just a quick note there, that's why we're going to be skipping that. And okay, so we've got our styles figured out there. And yeah, what we'll do now is let's head over to Fragment Display, and we will apply the styles to our views. Hold on a minute, where's the image button? Sorry about that, I did miss one there. We need to do the image button. So let's just say style, and this one's going to be called image button display. And I will include a parent for that one. That one's going to be a little bit different though. We're just going to say base.widget.appcompat. Let's see here, image button. And that's the parent that we use for that one. And all I want to do is say item Android alpha, and alpha is for transparency. We're going to be downloading a black icon, but I don't want it to be just like flat black. I want it to be a little bit sort of transparent to give it a softer kind of look to it. And we're going to say 0.54 for the alpha value. So that's like, I believe that means 54% of the, what am I trying to say here? It is, come on, brain, 46% more transparent than normal. I'm sure there's a simpler way of saying that, but my brain just failed me. And there's also going to be a background here, but we need to download that icon. So for now, I'll just say Android icon, background. And we're actually just going to leave that blank because we haven't downloaded the icon yet. And yeah, so let's head over to Fragment Display, and we'll apply all of our different styles. So for the image button, we say @style, style/image button display. Might as well just copy and paste these, save a little bit of time. And of course for the scroll view, that is scroll view display. And for the text view, that is, what do we call that one? Text view display. Text view display. And it's not going to look totally complete, but as you can see here, it is looking closer to what we want it to look like. So that is it for Fragment display, and most of our styles are done. The next thing we'll do is create those alternate resources and just sort of do the finishing touches on the styles. Okay, so what I've done is I've downloaded a particular icon, and I'll put that link to that in the description box below. That just comes from the material design sort of downloads page that the Android team has put together, so that's super awesome if you need to find icons. They're all free, and what you'll want to do is the icon itself is called IC Clear Black, and you're going to want to download the 36-dip version and PNG. And all of that should be pretty straightforward when you actually get to the website. If you do have any troubles with that, let me know in the description box, but it's pretty damn straightforward. Once you get to that, you're going to navigate to, I believe, the Android folder within the zip file that you'll download from there. And you should be given all these things like Drawable HDPI, Drawable MDPI, all that stuff. And then you can just copy and paste that into your res folder of your project, of the calculator project specifically. And that should add all of those in there. I didn't really think it was worth recording footage of that, so hopefully that works out. The other thing I did is for Drawable and Drawable v21, again in the values folder, or sorry, in the res folder, I created button display, button numpad, and button operation. And for both of those with the alternate resource for v21 as well. And the reason why I did that is what I would like to have happen is when the user clicks on a button, then I want some kind of visual indicator that sort of tells the user that a click event has registered. Now, in material design, the typical way of doing that is to use a ripple drawable. Now, we're going to do that for API version 21 or higher with these alternate resources here, but on lower API levels, we can't actually use the ripple drawable. So instead, we're just going to briefly sort of flash a change of color with the widget, and that'll pretty much achieve the same thing. It doesn't look as nice as the ripple drawable, but quite close. So what we can do, oh wait, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention, all of these files here, the reason why I'm not going to be typing them out and showing you sort of that way is because they'll all be included in the GitHub project, which will be down in the description box. There will be a link to that. And this will be good practice for you to navigate and find these on the GitHub. The reason why I didn't type them out is because I would not type these out when I'm creating a new project, unless it's for the first time. This is the kind of thing that you want to have lying around in a file somewhere so that you can just copy and paste it in. So let's just go over them really quickly, just so you know kind of the basics of them. Oops, actually, we won't do display. Let's do button numpad. That'll be a little bit easier. So for v21 or higher, all we need to do, all I've created, is a ripple tag. This right here tells the computer, for lack of a better term, what color of ripple I would like, and in that case, that's our color accent, and that's sort of that mint green there. And then this item inside tells the computer, okay, what color do I want you to use when I'm sort of not clicked? And that's just our typical color primary for button numpad. And then for the standard, not standard, but the non-alternate resource, all we want to do is when the state is pressed, so whenever the user taps on a button, change the color briefly to color accent. Otherwise, we want to keep it as color primary. So it's basically the same thing. The only difference is this uses the selector tag, and it's not going to create a ripple effect. It's just like a brief flash. So yeah, that's everything we need to talk about there. Same deal for button operation, except we're using color primary dark instead of color primary. And for button display, we just use transparent as the sort of standard background because it's going to have a drawable, it's going to have a source attached to it, so we don't want the background to interfere with the actual icon. And so what we'll do next is we'll just hop over to our styles files here, styles views specifically, and we'll just add those things in. So first things first, let's add in the proper background for our buttons here. So we're going to get rid of that. That's going to say drawable. And then we want to say for button number pad, that's going to be button, let's see, button numpad is what I called it. I'm actually just going to copy and paste that quicker. And this is going to be button, let's see here, I think I called it button operation. That's for the operation button. And then for text view display, that's not something that we need to change, so we'll just skip over that. The last one we need to create is for image button display. Again, copy and paste that, and just delete that. And we're going to say, what did I call this? Button display. I could probably call that like image button display, but I was being lazy. So all of those things are applied. Now if we head, oh, sorry, I forgot to specify the source for that. So let's go to Fragment display. And we can go to the image button. And for source, we're going to say at drawable IC clear black. Alright, so all that's completed. If we open up Activity Calculator, we should see a preview of our application with our styles basically finished. The only other thing that we're going to handle is we'll need to tweak things a little bit for layout, landscape mode, but we can actually do that at the very end. Now, the last part of this video which I want to do is show you how we can actually make changes to the sort of design of the application with this design window and styles combined. Okay, welcome back. So all we're going to do here is I'm going to make two quick changes that I forgot to do just a moment ago, but I'm also going to show you how to use the design preview to make decisions about the user interface without actually knowing ahead of time what you're going to do. In other words, how to fiddle around to see what a good user interface looks like. So, for example, I didn't actually know ahead of time that I wanted a particular font size, and I wanted this to be color primary, and I wanted this to be color primary dark, and etc., etc. I figured that out through fiddling around with this design preview here and our styles. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to do that. Now, before we do that, one thing I forgot to do in just like a moment ago was I forgot to update the styles views v16 with the appropriate backgrounds. So you're going to want to change that to color primary, change that to button numpad from color primary, and then button operation from color primary dark. So go ahead and make those changes, and that should fix that. Now, what we can do is, let's say for example, I don't like the fact that these buttons are, the text size on the buttons is so large. I can just hop in here and say, for example, 28 and 28. And let's say I don't want these buttons here to be color primary dark. I want it to be maybe color accent for some stupid reason. I'm not saying that this is something you would actually want to do. This is purely hypothetical. So I can go and change that. Now, this change might not be immediately reflected, which it isn't, in which case we have to go up here and do a quick Gradle sync. And that should fix it up. Now, that of course looks terrible, but I'm just saying, when I was creating this thing, I played around with all these different settings, and that's how I arrived at my user interface. So I'm going to go ahead and set those back to what they were. So that's going to be color primary dark. And I actually like the large font size when I use it on my actual device. And so we're going to set that back to 34. You can, feel free to play around with these. Change the color scheme, change the font size, anything you want to do. Play around with it, because that's really how I figured out and arrived at a user interface that I was happy with. So by all means, play around with it and see what you like. So let's just Gradle sync that so it looks good. Perfect. So that is it for this video. We've covered a lot of stuff, so I'll just take a moment to kind of summarize everything. I'll just have a little pop-up on the side here with a summary, and that's pretty much going to be it. This is the last video, or the last lesson for Section 1, which covers mostly user interface related stuff. In the next section, Section 2, we're going to get into some sort of more advanced concepts to do with sort of software engineering type stuff, and we're going to get started creating our sort of our back end, our fragments, our activity, and getting all that stuff kind of synced together. So lots of interesting stuff to come, and I'm super excited to get those videos done. And yeah, So that's everything for now. Please do subscribe if you get the chance, and thanks for all of your awesome support. I've been getting just an enormous amount of positive feedback on this channel, and if you've ever kind of wondered if I read comments and appreciate people who say thanks and all these nice things, it really does make my day when I wake up in the morning and I get a comment like, "Hey, this is an awesome Android video." So thanks for that, and thanks for watching. Peace out.